about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is this sketch. Okay, this composite sketch of what people believe is three individuals that were last seen talking to Brenda February 26, 1991, going into the very early morning hours, February 27th of 91. I was under a misconception, as I think a lot of people were, who didn't really listen or dive into the particulars of this sketch. So let me explain it. First of all, I have to go back to the early newspaper articles about this case, where it shows you the sketch. Now, a lot of websites that you'll see and things, they'll just have pictures of these three with nothing, no words, and just say the last three people. You know, it really does no good. Okay? You have to read it. Okay? So, before we get into that sketch, I want to read a newspaper article that talks about this sketch and how this sketch came to develop. It really wasn't meant to do that, I guess, but that's how I figured out, okay, what this sketch really means. Okay, now you have to follow along with me here, and I will talk slow and in layman's terms, so that way I feel that everybody can understand. You know, I hate these professors that get up there and they use all these big words and they try to sound like they're super smarter and they're better than you. Listen, that's all bullshit. Okay, we're all humans. Talk to us on a normal level so we understand what's going on. That's what I'm going to try to do. So, follow along here. What we don't know is whether we are talking about two or three different people, Shale said. Now, Shale is the first investigating officer from Spring Township. I believe it's Ron Shale. Noting that the rendering of a younger man was done by customers who left the bar before 11 p.m. February 26th with only one stranger remaining. It depicts a 25 to 30-year-old man with a slender build and neat, shiny black hair. Okay, we got that, right? Other customers who came in around 11 p.m. and stayed until 1:15 a.m. described an older man. Okay, you got that? They left the bar at the same time as the man who was there when they arrived and waited for him to start his white, medium-sized car before they drove away, Shale said. Police have two renderings of an older man. Two renderings of an older man. See, there isn't three people here. There's two people. This older man's sketch is the same person, given two different renderings of how he could look. So in reality, you can take away this or take away this. These are the two men that they're talking about. But what's important here, as I had read, they all left the bar. There was nobody in the bar speaking to Brenda. I've always been under the assumption, and I know a lot of people that I know who are following this case are under the impression that, first of all, these three people were in the bar talking to Brenda when she closed. Not necessarily true. They were in the bar, and they were probably one of the last ones to be in the bar with Brenda. But there's only two people. And they all left. This guy, he left early. He left around 11 o'clock. The older guy, he's the one that was the last one in there and stayed until the people who gave this information, they all left together. So what that means is Brenda is in the bar by herself at 1:15 a.m. when the last people leave. The people that the police officers talked to who gave them this information, they're last ones. So all this time, people were thinking these three people are in the bar with Brenda and she disappears. Not true. In fact, it's only two people, him, and they all left. Now, if anything, I would want to talk to, obviously, the people who gave these renderings. They're just witnesses, but, police obviously talked to them to get this. I'd like to see what they've been up to since then. Just run the investigative course. But I think it's important that the public is aware that you're not looking for three individuals. You're looking just for two. These two are the same men. And none of them were in there when the last people left. They all left, and they left Brenda there by herself. She's closing up the bar. The people watched them leave. Now, does that mean one of these individuals, one or two, could have waited, come back? Sure. Yes. Anything's possible there. And we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But, again, two individuals. That's it. Now, this individual here, although he seems to have left at 11 o'clock and has no bearing, more than likely, on what happened to Brenda, they haven't been able to identify him. Well, I think I might have. A lot of people want to point to a serial offender named Cruz. Listen, I think it's a lot more simpler than that. So you'll have to stay tuned when I get to the episode where I believe I identify this man. But it's important to know the facts about this sketch. So that way we're not giving out false information. By no fault of your own. That's just, again, with cold cases, especially 33 years, which this will be soon, information just gets mislabeled or lumped in, and people don't go to the root of it and find out what's the truth, what's the facts here. Not rumor and conjecture, Conjecture? It's a conjecture. See, I'm not a professor. I'm just a regular individual who happens to be a detective that works cold cases. And I know how to get to the root of these things. So, does this sketch have any bearing whatsoever on the disappearance of Brenda Condon? Stay tuned and find out. But right now, you know the origin of this sketch. It's only two people, an older man and a younger man. Younger man left at 11. The older man was watched getting into a specific car and leaving Brenda alone in the bar. Now that makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? Stay tuned to the next episode. Okay, now that I've described the misinformation, or maybe it's I described it maybe a little more clear. There's people that realize that there was only two people in those three sketches, but some thought that there was three, including me, until I really researched it. So now that we got that out of the way, I want to talk about the cigarette vendor. If you remember the episodes that I did maybe a year or two ago when I just briefly looked at some articles and gave my assessment of the case, I'd received an email from a dancer, I believe, that worked for Crazy Carl, and she had described a foot fetish with a silent partner and all these things that were never verified. I just said, hey, this is what the information I received, and I made it very clear that I never verified any of that stuff, and it was just given to me from somebody. But she also said in that one of the vendors had told her that he had come in and to the bar that morning and seen 3 people at the bar, Crazy Carl, Greg, and another guy, Rodney, and they were all hopped up on cocaine, and he didn't say anything because he was a user, and then he's passed away. Well, come to find out that this vendor, at least the cigarette vendor who contacted me, is still alive. Obviously, he contacted me. He didn't contact me from the dead. And said, hey, let's set the record straight here. So now the catch in this is I believe there's 2 vendors from the newspaper article. There's a rug vendor, and then there's my guy, the cigarette vendor. And maybe the information that the dancer got was from the rug vendor, who could possibly be dead and saw 3 guys at the bar. But, the validity of that, I'm going to cast doubt upon as of today because of what the cigarette vendor had to say. And the cigarette vendor actually went to my high school, graduated with my brother. This case, I'm getting a lot of information from people that I kind of know in one way or another. It's a small world. But what he had to say is this. He arrived at the bar, and he doesn't exactly know what time. Listen, it's 33 years. Now, if I went by the newspaper article, it's going to say around 1:30, 1:45. I find that one hard to believe because of what he tells me. So the cigarette vendor says, I arrived, the door was open, which was not unusual. I went in, saw nobody, which again was not unusual because usually somebody is working in the back office or something. I went to the pool vending thing, got the money, went to the cigarette machine vending, got the money, took the money, placed it on the bar, and left. Very insignificant, right? So of course I'm asking him other questions such as, okay, did you see any? Nope. He says everything appeared normal. There was nothing out of the ordinary. The door is always open because somebody is there opening up. They're usually in the back office, so I didn't see anything. So because of those observations, I can deduce a couple of things. One, I believe the Center Daily Times article that says the vendor came in at 1:30 is incorrect. Now, how can I deduce that? Well, I think, and this isn't 100%, but when I asked the vendor, hey, what time was it? And he said, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, something like that. Well, there is reports that patrons were serving themselves at the bar that next morning when Brenda wasn't there. Or the next, I assumed it was morning until I realized they didn't open till 11 after I did some research. So him not seeing, he doesn't remember if the lights were on. He doesn't remember if music was playing. Listen, he got there, and this is why this is so important. He was the first person there after this happened. There's no patrons in there because I believe we can deduce that it's morning still. Maybe mid-morning, before noon. Because if it's after 11 o'clock, I think the regulars are going to be there. The patrons who, according to newspaper articles and police officers, were serving themselves because there was no bartender there. Brenda was supposed to be there to open up. She's not there. She disappeared the night before. So I think we could put the cigarette vendor there mid-morning. Does that matter? Well, not really, but in this aspect it does. One important question that I asked him that I found was significant. And that was, hey, when you put the money on the bar, what was on the bar? Were there drinks? Was there ashtrays? Was there money? And he said, it looked there. Yes, there was stuff on the bar. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned. Boom. That's important. Okay. Before, I was under the assumption, because of a newspaper article that the police probably told them, was that there was money on the bar. And that was from patrons serving themselves. Going behind the bar, pouring a beer at 11:30 in the morning, putting the money there. Well, that's not the case. Because the bar is not open yet. And the vendor is there doing his thing. And there's glasses and things on that bar. Which means what? Now we can deduce she didn't at least finish cleaning up. Listen, this girl cleans houses for a living. She's not leaving a bar, especially her third night, maybe even second night working, a mess. Which raises doubt to me about those boots. And we'll get into a whole episode about those boots being left in the men's bathroom. So, whatever happened to Brenda, abducted, left on her own free will, murdered inside that bar, happened before she started cleaning up. So, some good information from the cigarette vendor. I would still really love to talk to the rug vendor. You know, the rugs that you have in the bars and stuff. They were in there at a certain time as well. And I'd like to know hear from them. Hey, what did you see? Maybe he'll come forward and say, I seen 3 guys at a bar and I can identify them. I wouldn't hold your breath. Okay. But good information. People still care. I'm still getting tips in. Some tips. It's just like, I've dealt with tips for 20 years. Some are going to be credible. Some are outlandish. That's all right. I can weed through them. I can see through the bullshit. I know which ones need followed up on, and I know which ones don't. And as always, I'm keeping the family informed. That's important. That's something police don't always do. I hear that complaint a lot. There's some that are really great at it. There's others, like Westmoreland County, that's completely horrible. So I'm letting Iris know. I'm letting Todd know. And I'm hoping Todd is letting his sister know as well. So everybody's in the loop. Transparency, honesty, integrity. It's what investigations are supposed to be about, not secrecy. There's a couple things that you have to keep secret, and I have them, but it's not impacting anything with the family. And if they ask me, I would tell them, okay? But there's certain things you got to keep close, because when you get a confession, you get a tip, you'll know, okay? So we looked at the suspects in the sketches, explained things more clearer, I hope. And I said, I think I know who the younger dark-haired guy is. I will explain that when I get into the episode specifically about suspects. I got to dig deeper into Greg. Okay? Greg, from all accounts from what I read, has been cleared by police. Well, I want to know why. I want to know how. Does he have an alibi? Who was that alibi? Alibis can change. Okay? Why are you clearing him? Maybe I misread that. Maybe that's not the case. I'm not, but I'm sure that I read that Greg isn't considered a suspect. We got to look at Crazy Carl. I still have that interview that I did with him, and I'm still in contact with Carl. I like I've told you before, and I've told him, because I'm honest with him as well. Hey, there's certain things that you're saying, your verbiage, certain things doesn't make sense, and I'm going to follow them up. If you're innocent, then you'd want me to do that, to either clear you. I'm sure, hopefully, that's what you want. But if it doesn't lead that way, I got to follow that up as well. We're going to look at this Cruz, who is a serial offender, truck stop, all that angle. Random person, patron in the bar. It could very well be. Also got to look at accidental death. If Brenda's doing drugs, she goes out to a car with somebody, overdoses, they get rid of her. Hey, it's not far-fetched. It's happened before, okay? So we have to look at all angles. We'll roll it out when I get there, if I can roll it out. If not, it's going to stay a possibility, maybe not a probability, her running away. We got information that the check amount, remember I talked that she had gotten a check from her aunt, who she would go to for money, as Todd said, occasionally. The amount of that check, if true, bothers me a little bit. So I got to follow up that angle on that check. A lot of work to do yet. I'm bringing you along in this investigation. This is how investigations work. Now, this is almost like if I was on the job still, this is what I would be doing. And I'm just bringing you along. Now, there's certain aspects of it that are different. I don't have accesses to the databases that I used to. But there's way around certain things. I can still do the research that I need on the suspects when we get there. And we're getting there. Okay, the victimology part is done. You're always learning that. Okay, that never goes away. But for now, we're moving on to the bar, to the suspects, to the tips, to where her remains could be. And everything is moving very good. Getting a lot of good feedback, a lot of good information from people. And that's why this is important. Listen, I hate freaking social media. I hate YouTube. But I love it for cold case investigations. Okay? Yeah, don't live your life through it. Nobody needs to see what you're eating for dinner every night. But to get information out and for people to connect and for research, for investigative purposes, see what person is friends with what person. Oh, you don't know that person? You said you didn't know them? Then why'd you comment on their page and say, I'll see you this weekend? Things like that. So you always gotta check every resource, including social media. So thanks for coming along for this journey, this ride, this investigation, very important, of Brenda Condon. And we'll see you next episode. Thanks for watching. Mains out.